my name is Kate Wilson, and I have a background in visual art as well as dance. I've been working in the area of social practice for 20 years or so, and maybe these last few years there's been a shift in my practice, maybe partly in the sort of merging of my dance and visual practice, and also in the differing kind of contexts of my social practice. So it would have been earlier on, it would have been more in education and sort of traditional community settings of varying kinds, but since 2015, I've been working particularly with people who have a diverse experience of mobility. So that would include acrobats, it would include performers that are wheelchair users, and the other shift has been the work that I've been doing with in direct provision centres as well, and working with dance and different kind of cultural experiences of dance. In a way, social practice is something that sort of emerged accidentally in my own practice. As I said, although I'd done a lot of work in schools and community groups, where I would say the sort of social practice that defines what I do now in a way started to develop was when I started working in 2015 with an ensemble that included a Special Olympics swimmer who had Down syndrome, a performer that was a wheelchair user, and an acrobat or parkour performer. My interest in bringing this ensemble together was to explore dance really out of the traditional styles or formats for dance, to explore different experiences of movement. I've always had a passion about how we can express individually through movement rather than necessarily be contained within a particular style of movement. So bringing these people with such a diverse experience of movement kind of created this palette for sharing and exploring what movement means to us. For me, it's always been about the relationships. I think in any collaboration, it's about developing relationships, and sometimes you take a chance. Like in 2016 was actually the first year I worked with a parkour performer, and he was completely new to me, whereas the other three performers in that period of work were people I had already developed a relationship with. But it was a happy chance, and it worked really well. But yeah, in terms of who I would choose to collaborate with, it's really how you click in terms of your interests and your ideas. I'm not someone that approaches projects in a very sort of director role. I'm interested in collaboration. I'm interested in creating a kind of level playing field where everybody contributes or feels they have kind of equal agency in what we create, that it's about really working together. So communication is key, and it's been all about how do we expand the potential of our fields of communication within a collaborative project, not just through discussion and talking, but through our languages and movement, our languages and reflective writing or reflective drawing. And often I found the transdisciplinary approach of using different media has enabled those pathways for communication to develop more deeply and quicker. It's important for me right at the outset with the group to kind of establish first and foremost a very safe space that everyone feels that they are supported to express, to reach out, to take risks, and not to be judged in that space, but to be supported in that space of risk taking, and to feel that from that very outset that it's a collective journey. It's not me taking a group on a journey. It's a journey we're taking together, and at times it might feel like it's me that's sort of finding the trajectory. At other times it might be another person in the group, or really often it's like a collective thing, that as the work unfolds, the trajectory emerges of where we're traveling together. So it's really about a shared space, a shared support system, and for that space to be a very safe and inclusive, non-judgmental space, and it's from that place then that we can take real risks that lead to the exciting work and lead to us discovering things that we didn't know about, or finding ourselves on an unexpected pathway, and that it's unexpected for all of us. It's not just like I already know where we're going. I suppose the bigger the group, in some ways, it can be more challenging to go to the really deep places in terms of what you're revealing and what you're communicating. But sometimes it can. But like that, it's about creating that safe space. And I think what's key, particularly with say groups of children, or different kinds of community groups, when you have a bigger group, is that you're using a process of reflection and evaluation throughout, which is allowing the children to validate what they're doing, but also to validate each other's work. And I think particularly when you're asking children to step outside of their comfort zone, you might be asking them to do some expressive movement, or perhaps more abstracted drawing, where they're used to more representative drawing, and the values system doesn't exist for them at that time. So they might be used to looking at a drawing and saying, well, the more it looks like, the tree, the better it is. And I'm saying, well, what happens if we step outside of that value system and start creating a new value system? But it's important then that you develop that value system together. And I might have structures for that I've used in those contexts, but each time with each group, it's going to develop into something new that comes out of that group. So the value system might be about, often is about things like, does it clearly express what I wanted to express? Is there clarity in it? But sometimes, it's the muddiness that makes it what it is, and that's what you wanted to express. So there's no sort of hard and fast rules that there might be in other value systems, but we keep discussing those value systems and developing them together, so that you're setting up a new set of structures, so that the children might be looking at these drawings then sort of saying, well, I like the variety of marks. I like the fact that there's really dark marks and there's really light marks in that particular drawing, which is not something they would have maybe picked out in a representational drawing. With movement, it might be, I like how some of the movement was really soft, and some of the movement had lots of high body tension. And to explore, for example, that movement can be expressed in a variety of tension levels, just like a drawing could be expressed through how dense the marks are to how light they are. So you're kind of creating a scale within which to work, and things always travel over. They don't fit nicely into boxes, but it starts to give new frameworks for saying why you like something, why it has value, and to kind of develop a new structure together for reflecting and evaluating what you're doing, and those structures then give you the possibility to really take risks, to step into territory that's lesser known. One of the sort of examples for me of that would be going into a classroom and asking the children to create their own movements, and we might do that the first week, and some kids will immediately come up with something very unique to themselves, and other kids will fall back on a movement that they know that's out of a pop video or something they've seen before. So if they do dance classes, maybe it's a dance move, those kind of things, because it's something familiar to them, and they know already this particular movement has value in a different system. But as we work and we start exploring creating our own new value system, the kids will gradually let go of those sort of preconceived movements that have come out of a different context, freeing them up to start actually discovering what is the way my body wants to move, what suits the way I'm built, what suits my feeling today, and enter into the I suppose the joy and the endless possibilities of expression through movement, and to feel that they're not being judged by their peers, because we've created now this new value system that says, any movement goes, once you're clear about it and you're strong in yourself about it, and we keep watching each other and saying, yes, I like that, and why I like that is because of A, B, C. Within my own practice, I would see reflection and evaluation as sort of distinct processes that have happened differently, although there's obviously a lot of crossover, and at the end of the day it's kind of semantics how people choose to use those words and what they mean for them. But for myself, reflection is something that happens really still within the creative process, so it's a way of noticing what you've just done, or what someone else has just done, through a slightly different lens. So often it would entail a different media. If I've been moving, maybe it was then writing or drawing. If I've been drawing, then it might be spoken word or writing, or even moving. But it's within that process. And for me, reflection can happen in my practice, in a social context, social practice context, without having to step outside of being within creative process. So often an hour or a 2 hour workshop or collaborative exploration will be interspersed with lots of reflective processes throughout, which deepen those processes. Whereas evaluation is almost like this opportunity to step outside of that process and see it a little bit from the outside. It's the point at which you start talking about what you did in a practical way rather than a completely immersed creative way. So the kind of creative writing that would happen for reflection would be more sort of word association, and it doesn't have to make sense. Whereas the writing that would happen in evaluation and the discussion in evaluation kind of does have to make sense, or is more about really talking about what we did. Both extremely important in my own practice and in the practice I do with groups. We need that to be able to reflect without stepping outside of where we are. So I think that that's a very important process, to be able to reflect and still be within that space, that creative space. And occasionally a reflection might turn into an evaluation, and sometimes that's fine mid-workshop, but sometimes it really does feel like it's taking you out of that kind of creative zone, and it can be quite hard then to re-immerse yourself. So for me, it's really being aware of when these processes are relevant and right, and finding patterns within a group of what works for everyone in the group. And I think, this idea of evaluation, anyone who's involved in getting funding for projects probably has this sort of slight image of evaluation being something to do with filling out a questionnaire at the end of a project, like a kind of add-on at the end of a project. For me, that might be necessary for funders, but it's not really going to feed into the work that we're doing. But the evaluation that happens throughout that project is vital to the project's potential, fulfilling its potential. I think it's important maybe to just allow ourselves that term, evaluation, and to integrate it into our processes in a way that makes sense to our own processes, rather than allowing it just to exist for some external structure, like a funding structure. That's kind of a separate thing altogether. And I'm not saying that it's not important and necessary. Obviously, the funding bodies have all their processing to do as well. That's really important. But for your own practice and for collaborative practices, I think, keeping the evaluation as close to the actual practice helps it continue to be as valuable as it can be. So rather than a set of questions at the end of a workshop, perhaps it's really just giving out a sheet of paper and saying, write about your experience, so that you're not predetermining how someone thinks about their experience. Maybe more valuable to you as a practitioner, maybe more valuable to the group if you're continuing to work with that group, than a sort of set of questions that kind of point in certain directions. For me anyway, that would definitely be important, to keep that, all the reflection and evaluation really integrated and part of the process, and framed in a way that makes sense to your process. My process is open-ended, and the evaluation needs to be that way as well. Needs to be an open, safe space. Definitely a big learning from me has been about finding the supports that you need when you're not confident yet about what you're stepping into. I suppose recognizing what are the most useful supports for yourself, which enable you to really support your group then and the development of a project. So it may be through a mentorship, it may be through collaborating with a peer. I suppose not feeling like you have to hold it all yourself. I think that was something that I still maybe sometimes struggle with as well. Is I think often artists have can have a predisposition to feel like they need to hold everything somehow themselves, and whilst they're working within a collaboration, somehow they're still holding the weight of that collaboration. But to actually look at the potential in delegating, and whether it means a project manager, whether it means handing over the documentation to someone else, or bringing another facilitator to work side by side with. I think that would be the sort of key element for me, is that identifying the supports that will be useful to you for this particular project and at this particular junction in your level of expertise, your level of experience, and not being afraid to ask and to find that help and ask, even if you think, oh, they'll be too busy, or they have more interesting things to do. Go for it. Ask. No harm in asking. And people are often delighted to be in that supportive role. When you're dealing with groups, when you're dealing with collaborations, one thing that's very easy to underestimate is the amount of management involved. So if you can bring in someone to work with on the project management side, that's fantastic. It's not always possible on small budgets. So when it's not possible, to really, I suppose, be realistic about how much time that will take out of your ability to be present creatively and as a facilitator, how much time it will take, and how much creative energy it might also take, the management side of things. And there's always more than you anticipate. If you keep it open and exciting for you, once you have this sort of idea of a starting point, if you're excited about what might unfold, it's very likely that the people around you will also feel that excitement and find the space themselves to be to take risks, to be explorative, and to be excited about where the journey might lead. So I guess just checking in with yourself as you go, am I still really excited, or has things like project management taken over, and how do I keep that ignited in myself, because if it's still ignited in yourself, then you're much more likely to be able to keep that space open for everyone else to have that possibility as well.